Hey guys, Corey here. Today I am super excited to be talking about all things delays. All right, so I use several different delays in my live and studio templates. So I'm going to be breaking those down for you, showing you what I use them for, how I've got them set up, and hopefully give you some ideas of how you can utilize different delay sounds for the music that you're making live or recording or whatever the case may be. All right, so the first two we're going to look at are actually tape delays. This is actually one of my favorite kind of delays, is tape delay. So they have a characteristic. You kind of get a little bit of pitch modulation, meaning it kind of sounds like it's going slightly in and out of tune over time. You get a little bit of that wobble effect, a little bit of dirt and grain, and just filtering going on using certain tape delays. So the first one I want to show you here is based off of an old tape delay called an Echoplex. So this plugin that I'm using for this is made by Audiority, is the name of the plugin, and it's called Plexi Tape. Okay, so you look at it, just how it's laid out on the screen, it looks pretty similar to what the actual units look like, but I'm not going to dive into every single detail on this one, but I've got this one dialed in, I believe, as 16th notes, so almost like a slapback delay in a lot of cases. So where I want something to feel like it's being reflected around the room or something, I'll use this one. So some of the parameters that I use the most when I'm wanting to change or tweak this sound a little bit would be actually the amount of repeats, the echo or sustain, echo sustain, what they call it here. A lot of times it's called feedback on delays. That's typically the term that's used, but on this one it's called echo sustain. So I'll adjust that as I see fit. And then this preamp, I've got it set to late right now. And this switching it to early makes it sound brighter. And then the late setting sounds a lot thicker and darker. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn this up. I'm going to play a little clip of a synth part and then a little piano part after that without the delay, so you can just hear what the dry sound is. And then I'm going to turn that up so you can hear exactly what this echo is doing, this tape delay is doing to the sound, right? So here's the dry sounds. Okay, so just short little clips there so you can get an idea of what's coming through. And then if I turn the delay up, okay, so that is a pretty typical slapback delay for me. I use that quite a bit. So if I play that again and I increase the feedback, you'll almost kind of get this ringing, we kind of call it self-oscillating sound, where the repeats just keep happening and building up over time and get really intense. I'm not going to let it get too crazy here, but I'm going to turn that up so you can hear what happens when I adjust this echo sustain. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that up and then play that same thing again. Okay, so that is quite a bit different sounding. Obviously, everything's kind of stretched out and longer. The effect is way more obvious. And then I wanted to show you the effect, the preamp effect, what that sounds like. So this is a little bit of the synth as it was, with the late setting, and then this is the early setting. So a little bit cleaner and tighter, brighter sound on the early setting. So I like to switch between those depending on what I'm feeding through this slapback. A lot of times I'll blend a little bit of piano in there and blend it with a room reverb. It just depends on what the sound is that I'm going for, how much space I want to create. But typically I'm using this plugin specifically just for slapback delays, all right? So that is the Plexi Tape by Audiority. Then my next, this is honestly probably my favorite plugin ever made, this Outer Space plugin by Audio thing. So this is modeled after a RE201 tape delay. I think one of the coolest delays ever made. There's all kinds of different settings on here, but basically how this worked was the tape was played on this tape deck, and there's different playheads. So the tape would be spinning, and then these playheads would pick off of that and replicate the sound depending on how you've got the knobs dialed in and the speed, and all those different things. So some of the main controls here that I really automate sometimes and mess with, I'll reach for these specific knobs when I'm playing live, are going to be the intensity and the input and output. I like to drive the signal a little bit more by driving the input and then bringing the output down. So it gets a little bit grittier. It's got a preamp setting here that you can see I've got turned on. So the sound by itself is a little bit more gritty with that on. It breaks up a little bit, almost kind of like a subtle saturation or distortion. And then it's got bass and treble controls, really handy. I've got bass by default where it's at, and then the treble turned down a little bit darker, creamier tone with that set where it's at there. And then there's a built-in reverb. It's a spring reverb. I don't use this too often, but a lot of times you'll hear guys use that, especially on sounds like Rhodes. They'll throw that through the spring reverb on one of these and then blend in the delay with it, and it's got a really unique kind of classic delay sound for electronic keyboard sound. So that's the reverb. And then this repeat rate, you can adjust the subdivisions by twisting that, and it keeps them all kind of lined up and in sync together. You've got these three, like I said, those playback heads. There's actually three of them. This is kind of the default setting that I have in my template. So I'm just using two of them, and I've got them hard panned left, right. So I'm kind of getting this ping pong where the dotted eighth note is on one side and the just straight eighth note is on the other side. So I get this ping-pongy kind of real wide stereo effect. And then this intensity is the feedback. So how many repeats or how many delays are being put out through the delay. And then obviously if I turn this all the way down, you're only going to get one. If I turn it up, this actually has a value of greater than 100%. So you kind of get that self-oscillating effect that I was telling you about with the other one. This sounds a lot more gritty, kind of swirly and almost reverb-like. And the longer you let it self-oscillate, the dirtier and grungier the sound gets. And that's kind of what I like about this delay specifically, is how just kind of messed up the signal gets after a while. So that's the one parameter that I adjust all the time when I'm automating and playing live. I like to mess with that. And then this wow and flutter, that pitch modulation I talked about where it feels like it's going in and out of tune a little bit. I've got that pretty subtle, but you can really crank it and get some crazy sounds. And then just your echo volume. And then you've got, this is the window lets you control the separate tape heads here that are represented by this little window. You can adjust the level and the panning of each one of those. And then over here, you've got a low and high cut filter, ducking, and pre-emphasis. So this kind of brightens up the signal. The pre-emphasis, the ducking basically looks at the input, the signal coming into it, and it'll actually bring the delay that you hear down in level a little bit. So I've got that. It's real subtle. And then like I said, some of these controls are just switches to send the wet only signal on or off. The stereo effect, it's by default a mono delay, but if you turn this on, it adds a stereo effect where it delays one side slightly longer than the other if you don't have these heads panned hard left and right like I do. So a few other features I'm not going to dive into here, but I just want to give you a good example of what this sounds like, and then I'll play it again with those, with the intensity turned up and mess with some of those parameters so you can hear exactly what those sound like. All right, so here we go. right? So rhythmically, it adds a lot of interest having the left-right thing, the stereo, eighth note, and dotted eighth note on one side, complementing each other. So I'm going to turn the input volume up a little bit, drive it a little bit more, and bring this down. Output. And then I am going to bring up the intensity or that feedback. So I'm going to slowly do this and let it kind of self-oscillate after I play this synth loop, all right? So here we go. Okay, so it can get out of hand if you leave that up too long and too much. But it's nice for creating textures, especially with like pads and kind of droney single note sounds, where I might just be holding a pad like a single note. I want something to just kind of add some texture and rhythmic interest there. It just gets dirtier and dirtier the longer you let that play out. So that's a great control for that I adjust all the time. I'm going to play it one more time and adjust that wow and flutter so you can see what that's like. All right, so that's a fun control. Make it sound really out of tune, like an old cassette deck or something like that. So a lot of fun to be had with this plugin. So go check that out. Again, this is Outer Space by Audio Thing. Probably my favorite delay. And then this next one, made by the same company that did the Echoplex. This is called the Echo's T7E Mark II. So this is a little bit different than a tape delay, but it's kind of the same principle where you have these different playback heads. So instead of using tape, they actually use like a magnetic disc or magnetic drum that the signal was recorded onto, and it just spins around, and these playback heads pick off that drum, and you have all these controls here. So there's a lot to look at here, but you see these head controls right here where you have tone, error, volume control. So the tone is just the darkness, brightness. Error is just the timing of it and how much, how accurate that is. So I've got those turned down, so I've got it really locked in to the BPM. If I adjust those, it gets kind of out of sync and starts getting a little crazy. So I prefer to have that at 0, but if you want something a little more random and spacey, you can adjust those. And then the volume, of course. And then you've got an overall feedback level. Some parameters here that are only engaged depending on what mode you've got. I've got it in sync mode just because I like my BPMs in the session to control the delay time. So everything stays in sync and kind of quantized when it comes in my delays. You don't have to use that, but that's how I've got it built in my templates to keep everything in time real smooth. And then this age control is really cool. Kind of adds a little bit of wobble, kind of that pitchy wobble effect, the wow and flutter from the tape delay. This kind of is its own version of that. Then you can add some old noise, make it sound like a ground loop or hum that was present obviously in the original older units that were a little bit noisier. And then all of these tone controls, different modes here as far as echo, repeats and swell. Right now I've got it on just the regular repeat function here. And then the switch control lets you, if you look down here, you can actually control the subdivision of the delay. So right here, this is set at quarter notes. But if I control the switch, that becomes a dotted quarter note. And then this becomes a half note here. So if I go all the way down to number 1, that's actually an eighth note. So I've got this, this is my main quarter note delay. What I like about it is adjusting this age control here. I use that a lot because it, like I said, it has a little bit of that pitch modulation going on. So when I'm playing a piano specifically, I love using this with piano. I will utilize that age control if I want a little bit of pitch modulation on a piano, instead of it just being an exact copy of the piano. I want it a little bit out of tune, kind of wobbly, kind of like something's messed up, but it's really subtle. This is a really dark sounding delay, so all that high end is kind of filtered off, and it adds a lot of really cool texture when you blend it with say like a hall reverb or something. So this is that same synth and piano MIDI clip, exactly how I've got it in the template, so you can hear just by default the way I've got it set up, and then I'll start messing with some of the parameters again. So here we go. All right, so you can hear it's a really dark sounding delay. I'm gonna go ahead and mess with the feedback. So you see that length of swell, this controls the feedback or the intensity of it. So here we go. Okay, so that's a really unique sound, really cool for like intros and outros. If you automate that parameter there, does some really cool stuff in terms of creating a really unique delay sound, just kind of filtered out sound. And then this is the age. I'm going to play that again and mess with the age control here. So. All right, so actually turning that age down actually introduces more of that pitch modulation there that I really like. So turning that down does that, turning it up actually makes it a little bit more hi-fi, adds a little bit more high-end, a little less dirt and grit to it. But man, that's the Echoes T7E. That's, again, this was built or created to kind of emulate, it was called a Benson Echo Rec delay. So that's a little rundown. Another cool feature, just before I go on to the next one, I forgot to show you this magnetic disc. It spins, but when I click it, check out what happens here. All right, so really cool effects there, just by clicking that disc that's spinning around. So pretty cool effect to mess with there for some more experimental sounds there, I guess. So then my next delay I want to show you, this is made by Valhalla. So you've probably heard me talk about the Valhalla Vintage verb, room reverb, shimmer, all that kind of stuff. They've got a delay that came out not too long ago. And of course I was like, man, I bet it's just as great as the reverb. So I checked that out. And man, it's one of my favorite delays. So this has kind of got all these different modes and types of delays built into it. So here's a list here. If you go to mode, you've got tape, hi-fi. This is BBD or bucket brigade delay. So this is based off of an old analog circuit. Digital, ghost, pitch, reverse pitch, bucket brigade, duck, clarity, and duct tape. So these are all, this is the latest version. They used to only have like 6 or 7 of these, and then they added these ducking ones and clarity ones. So these are really cool. If you're looking for different flavors, like I said, they've got the tape and hi-fi. These are 2 tape delays, and this duct tape is obviously a tape delay as well. The default tape setting has a little bit of noise built into it, so it's not perfectly clean. So if you have this turned on by default, even if the mix is at 0, you get a little bit of noise, just a little bit of that hiss. But some of the really cool effects on here, parameters that I like to mess with are the feedback. Again, kind of a given, depending on how many repeats I want. This age control really affects the tone, adds some of that grit, especially on the tape setting, but it adds straight up overdrive or distortion depending on what you're on. So by default in my template, I usually use it on the duct tape. Keeps it clean, it doesn't have the hiss, that noise on the tape. But if I go to digital or bucket brigade, that age will sound completely different. So when I engage this, you can also hear that it got a little bit louder as well with the noise. I'm not sure if you can hear that, but let me turn That up just a little bit. Okay, so you can hear a little bit of that noise it's creating on some of these modes. So they did a really good job of emulating a lot of this stuff. But again, that's Bucket Brigade if I want to duck it with no noise. Now the noise is gone in that mode, all right? So a lot of the same parameters, just getting rid of the noise and cleaning it up a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and play that same, actually, no, I'm going to play a different sound. I'm just going to mess around with it so you can hear what this is doing. So this is just a dry synth by itself. And then this is with the delay. Okay, so that's the Bucket Brigade. This is my default, the duct tape. So you get some of that pitch wobble. I love that. And then if I mess with this age, turn it up. Get some distortion, crunchiness that's pretty unique to depending on the mode that you've got selected here. So if I go to digital, it's going to sound completely different. Bring that back down. It's more clean, add a little bit of it in. So yeah, so the cool thing about this is each mode, all these settings, the age, the drive, they sound different, but they actually are controlling different parameters. So I'll show you how I like to use this duct tape with the feedback and what that self-oscillating that I showed you in the other Space Echo kind of sounds like. All right, so a lot of fun to be had with that on the tape mode, but let's go to digital and see what, actually no, that's not the one I wanted. Clarity, here we go. So this is a really clean, brighter delay. So this is what that sounds like. Okay, so you can tell when I adjust the age on that, it just darkens up the tone. Putting it at 0 is more just a straight, really clear digital delay. Okay, then you've got different modes here, note, dotted, triplet, and then milliseconds. So a lot of flexibility. You've also got this era control, past, present, and future. So if I go to future, this is probably even more hi-fi sounding, brighter, more full range fidelity. Just that age again. Okay, so adjusting some of that high end. If I drive it a little bit, bring the age back down. Obviously boost the level of the delay a little bit because I'm driving it, but let's go to a different mode. Let's go to Bucket Brigade Duck. Let's go to the tape. Adjust the age. Okay, so adjusting those parameters really affect the tone of the delay itself, which is really cool. So, man, if I had to tell anybody one delay to pick out, if they were looking to buy a third-party plugin, excuse me, I would definitely go pick this up. I think every plugin that Valhalla makes is $50, so it's not that expensive. It's so incredibly versatile. All these different modes, different eras, all these controls here. It's a lot of fun to play around with. I could spend hours just going through presets that are built into here. and just having fun listening to what they do to my signal there. So go check out Valhalla delay for sure. And then this last one I want to show you, I don't use this too much, but this is called Replica. This is by Native Instruments. I think this was included with one of the Native Instruments like instrument bundles that I got with like organ and key stuff, synth, all that kind of stuff. So this was included in one of that, but you can buy it separately. But what I like about this is you've got a couple different modes here. So this vintage digital, it's got this default crunch mode and some cool filtering options. So I want to turn the filter off and play the same thing here for you, same synth sound, and show you what that quality knob does. So this is high. Oops, let me turn my Valhalla down again. Here we go. This is Replica. And if I turn this down to crunch, so it's almost got like a really crunchy 8-bit type tone to it on all those delays. Okay, and obviously you've got the feedback control, low and high cut filter, but then this modulation filter is really cool. So this kind of auto pan, it's got an auto pan vibe, but it's filtering side to side when it's in stereo mode. So this is what that sounds like. I'm gonna switch this to modern. I think you can hear it a little bit better. And if I go back to digital, okay, so really unique soundscapes can be dialed in from this guy. Again, this is on wide mode. If I go to ping pong, and then normal mode, shut the filter off so you can hear wide. Okay, so this is a really cool digital delay plugin. I have some fun with this on lead synth sounds, kind of like what I was playing there. I even, when I'm doing mixes, I'll run vocals through it sometimes to get that crunchiness out of that vintage digital delay mode there. So definitely worth checking out if you're into more of that just straight ahead delay. A little bit less control, but some really cool modes to mess around with specifically for synth stuff. I don't really use this for piano or Rhodes or anything like that, but for synthesizers, pads, that kind of thing, adding some texture, it's really cool. So, man, these are my favorite delays to use, guys. There's a bunch of other ones out there that are really popular. I just use these because they're fairly low on CPU, but there's a lot of great ones out there. One popular one in studio stuff is Sound Toys Echo Boy. Has a ton of settings, really flexible. H Delay by Waves is another one that I use in the studio quite a bit. There's all kinds of them out there, guys. So go check these out. Like I said, if I had one that I had to recommend to people, go check out Valhalla Delay. It's got a ton of stuff that is just really well created. Presets are amazing. Such a flexible delay to have fun with there. So hope this video is a help to you guys. I hope you have fun checking out those delays, and I will see you next time.